Dogworks Radio is sponsored by Alaska Dogworks. Check out their website at alaskadogworks.com. From First Paw Media, sponsored by First Paw Coffee Company, this is the Dog Driver Show. Visit our website at dogworksradio.com. Now here are your hosts, Robert Forto and Kurosh Parto.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Robert and I'm here with my co-host KP and we are the Dog Driver Show, and today we have an interesting guest calling in from Australia. His name is Clint Graham. Okay, KP, what do you know about Clint?
Clint and Mandy, I met him maybe around 10 years ago or so in Alaska, actually. They came here and they hung out for several races. They did tours of kennels, and Clint actually raced Limited North American Championship, and then he came back. I can easily say that he is probably the most famous and musher in Australia, because he's been in the sport for a while. He has introduced European hounds in Australia, which is very difficult to do. Clint, thank you for being part of this show, and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you started in the sport.
Good morning, gentlemen. No worries. Thanks for this. Thanks for the interview. Started, 97, I think. We started with Malamutes, and we just sort of went from there. I think we got our first Alaskans in about 2005. I wanted to race a bigger team, and just to get the bigger team of Malamutes was just too hard to get them all running at the same time and everything like that. And I thought, I'll just get Alaskans. It'd be easier for handlers to get handlers at start lines as well. So we got a couple of Alaskans as yearlings that were getting rehomed, and then raced them for a year. And then we got one of the sisters from the same litter from another friend who was trying to get out. And then we raced those guys. I raced them as the two-dog team for another year or so, and then we bred with a mate probably about a year later. About 2008, we bred with a mate with an English pointer, purebred English pointer. He was racing in his team. And that was just the direction we wanted to go with that sort of breeding, the European sort of looking dogs. And then we bred the first Euros, 50-50s, I guess you could sort of say. Alaska, 50% Alaska, 50% English pointer. And then after that, we imported a seaman from Sweden, and then the rest is history, I guess. Bred all of those guys. Went from there.
Clint, we've interviewed a couple other people from Australia before. However, in my opinion, you are the person who introduced the European lines mainly in Australia. Tell us how difficult it is to import dogs, and why do you have to do the semen import instead?
Yeah, we were looking at trying to, with our 50-50s, we wanted to sort of go, righto, what do we do now? What's the next step? And go from there. And there was nothing really in Australia we wanted to breed to. We wanted to go for a little bit more European sort of style looking dog, because everything here was mainly Alaskan that was getting raced. It was a lot more purebred, and there was a fair few Alaskans, but the ones that we liked were all related to the Alaskans that we had, so we couldn't go there, so we had to sort of go outside. So we looked at a few kennels, and we came across one in Sweden where we really liked the dogs, and it was easy to approach them and talk to them. We sort of looked at importing a dog, but the cost of importing a dog was just crazy. So we thought, we'll just do the semen, import the semen. We thought, it'll be cheaper, but there wasn't too much difference in price, really, by the time we finished doing everything. And then we had to basically go that way, just import the semen, because the cost was crazy to bring the dog in. And it was mainly the quarantine, where the dog had to wait, up to 4 months or so in quarantine. We just thought, it's not fair on the dog. So we just brought the semen in. It was easier. We ended up bringing, I think we brought in about 6 or 7 straws from the one dog. And then every time we sort of had a litter, we paid each time we used this sort of semen.
And then you brought these, I believe, the semen from Christina Linder from Sweden, if I'm not mistaken, and that created the first generation of your Eurohounds in Australia. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And did you start racing immediately with those dogs, or how did you were perceived, to have new dogs, I guess, coming in that circuit in Australia?
Yeah, we started racing them pretty well as soon as they were old enough to race. Actually, the first litter that we had, we put into the old Alaskan bitch. Well, she wasn't that old, but the Alaskan bitch that we had that we used for the 50-50 breeding. And then she had a complication. Something went wrong there, but we had to get basically the whole litter died, but they revived 2. So our first the imported semen breeding, we ended up getting the 2 dogs from. So we ended up slotting them into the 4-dog team that I had, and I was running them as a 6. And that was a crazy time at the start. The young boy he was a loose cannon, and I thought, oh my God, this dog is just nuts. And then something happened to my main leader. And then I thought, I'll put him in lead. Man, he was like, don't put him in lead. He's not ready for it. And I was like, it was a local race. I thought, it'll be all right. And, yeah, he just really shone from there on. And from that moment on, I basically just left him in lead because he just excelled in lead. And I just couldn't believe it. He was just leading the whole team perfectly. And then we sort of went from there. He just ended up being my main leader for the next, I think it was about 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, I believe, if I remember, you dominated the dryland races in Australia with those dogs for years because you had something new, which was exceptional at that time in Australia. Is that right?
Yeah, we didn't get beat for, I think it was about 6 seasons once I had him in lead. And then it was only recently I took him out of lead because he was just starting to struggle with the younger dogs. And then he had a bit of a shoulder injury, and then just went from there. He just sort of slowed down, and the young dogs further back in the team were starting to overtake him, and I thought, I can't do this to him. So we spent the last year, I reckon, trying to train up a young leader from the youngest lot. And he's just a little bit of a crazy trainer. He's not getting the idea of leading too well. But this year's been a total write-off with the COVID because there hasn't been any racing here, not in this state. Back home in South Australia there was, but we moved into state for work. But here in Victoria there's been stuff all racing.
Clint, you mentioned about local races. A lot of our mushers are not familiar with Australia, and Australia is not the most well-known place for sled dog racing to start with. How many races do you have, and what are the local races? Do you have a lot of events happening?
Back in South Australia, where we mainly were for the last, since we started till last year, 20-something years or whatever it is, there's a decent local circuit there. There's back when we started, there was only the one club, and then that was just a purebred club, but they allowed, you could race crossbreeds, but they wanted to keep it, exclusively purebred. And then that club sort of broke apart when there was more Alaskans coming into the sport and people wanted to sort of use other sort of breeds, so they formed an open breed club. And then there was the Wild Dog Mushers Club, which I was president of for a while back in South Australia, and they were a predominantly open breed club. They would have one major race for the year, Wild Dog would, and then the other club in South Australia would have probably a season of maybe six or 7 races throughout the year. So back home in South Australia would have, for a season, you'd probably get about 8 races. And then interstate, you'd probably have there's a few clubs interstate in each state that would have a couple of races each. So, and then national circuit wouldn't be too bad. I think you'd have 2 major races in Western Australia. You'd have 2 major races in South Australia. I think you'd have probably 3 in Victoria and 2 in New South Wales, 1 in Canberra as well. The national circuit was pretty good.
Well, Australia is not well known for being the smallest country either. So when you say 2 on this state and 2 on this state, how far away are these races from each other?
Our closest race back when we were in South Australia would have been 8 hours away. That would have been in Victoria. And then Canberra, I think, was about 12 and a bit hours. And then New South Wales would probably be about maybe 14 to where the race was. And then West Australia, it's probably about a 2.5 day drive.
Actually, did you ever drive 2.5 days to go to the race?
No, we were going to go that year. One year when they had the national titles, we thought, yeah, we're going to head over for it. And actually, that year, I reckon they had Lena Boyson as their race marshal, I think it was, when they had the nationals. I could be wrong, but I think it was about that time when she was over there. But we didn't end up going. I think we had one of the dogs come down sick, one of the older ones. So we thought, it's just too much to get someone to look after them. Maybe when my mum or my dad would look after them while we were going away. So we thought, we'll just stay here. It's 2 or 3 day drive there, 2 days racing, and then to drive back was just going to be a little bit too much for the dogs, we thought.
So when you talk about distances, obviously there is a lot of cost involved to travel for 2 days or 3 days to go to a race. How expensive and how hard it is to have sled dogs and to have a race circuit that you follow in Australia, Clint?
You definitely don't get no monetary reward for winning, not like over there with you guys. But it can add up. I guess everyone's got a camp, so like at the race site, so you don't really have to worry about the cost of accommodation on the way there. Every time we travelled, we'd always sort of pull up in a overnight car park and sleep, in the car with the dogs and stuff like that, because it would just be easier, be quieter as well, because you want to get out, feed them, and they want to bark and stretch and stuff like that. So we didn't want to try and stay in a caravan park. We did it a couple of times and got nearly run out of town from the neighbours, but, we sort of try to keep them as quiet as we possibly can while you're trying to feed, but you know what it's like. Yeah, the cost isn't too bad, I guess. You just got to do the fuel, and when they're all coming up and stuff like that. So you sort of like, I'll allocate myself maybe 3 interstate runs this year, and just so, you can keep a good standing in the national point scorer and stuff like that, and you sort of pick and choose the ones that you want to do. You like the races that you like some of the circuits are like, I'm going to do that one definitely next year, and there's some where you go, I didn't really like that track and wasn't really suited or whatever it is. Everyone's got their own little opinion on tracks and stuff like that, but you pick and choose the ones that you really like, or you try to go to all the big ones so you can really have a crack at everyone else that's there, have a good race against all the good teams. But I guess it'd be like for you guys, you pick and choose which ones you want to go for.
That is true. Clint, you are one of the what I would call old timers of this sport, at least in Australia. And I know that you've mentored a lot of younger generations and younger people. Very recently, we interviewed Zara from Australia also, who spoke about your kennel and your team and your help. How important it is for people like yourself, people for actually all aspects of our sport, to introduce new people to our sport and to our passion.
I reckon it's pretty important, especially nowadays. You really want to try and help out the people and save them from making mistakes that, all of us have sort of made small mistakes when we sort of started the sport, and you think, this that's going to be the next champion dog, and you just rush into decisions and stuff like that. But you can't give everyone. I mean, you can point them in the right direction as to, you should read this, you should read that, and look at this, and look how they've done it and stuff like that. But a lot of people will sort of, no worries, they'll take it on board, but then they'll just go, I'm just going to go gung-ho and do that now, especially with, social media and stuff like that. There's a lot of, instant sort of professionals out there because they've sort of, I know I've watched that YouTube video and I've done this, so I know exactly what I'm doing. But you just got to basically, what's the speed mushing manual, what to say? The best thing to do is just listen first and take it all in.
Clint, you obviously your season is completely opposite of ours in Alaska. Your winters and summers are the opposite. How do you organize your training? And when you're organizing for your races, which are mostly dry land races, how do you prepare your dogs to compete in the classes you're aiming to win?
Back home when we were in South Australia, it was hard to get the training in that you wanted, especially for the bigger teams. Well, I'm looking at, maybe the between 5 to 7 or 8 kilometre class. I mean, it's nothing for you guys, but that's like our main class distance for that 6-dog team. It'd be about 6 kilometres. And it's hard at the start of the season because you only got a limited time to where it's cold enough, especially to train a team. A lot of the single guys, the monosport, crew, they can sort of go and they can dabble a little bit more in warmer temperatures, but to get the team aspect, if we're training maybe 10 or 12 dogs at a time, 2 teams, we want it to be a lot colder because by the time you get everyone hooked up, they're all hot and puffing and from barking and jumping around. We can't really risk the borderline temperatures, so we want to go when it's definitely cold. So we'll probably start our training a little bit later than others, and then we've got to try and squeeze it all in to get the distance. So it's tricky. We're pretty well, you're training all season, and dogs probably aren't ready until 3/4 of the way through the season, which is it's a bit crap, but that's everyone here, everyone deals with it, everybody knows that's the way it is here, and you just got to go for that.
This year, with the COVID situation that we have, are all the races canceled, or you still have some options to run your dogs in competitions?
I think that everything's been cancelled here in Victoria where we are now. I think back home in South Australia, I think they had a couple of races. I'm not too sure how many. I don't think they had anything in New South Wales. I could be wrong, but it'd only be local. I think they had a couple of races up in Queensland, actually. Not too sure about West Australia either, but it's been, especially the Victorian sort of side of it, the COVID sort of stuff has really hit it hard over here. The restrictions, and, quarantine and all that sort of stuff. Now that we're in Victoria, we can't go back home to South Australia. We've got to spend 2 weeks in quarantine in a hotel before we go see family back there. So it's pretty hard at the moment, but hopefully it gets all sort of cleared up. I don't know, better.
Clint, I believe you had mentioned earlier in the interview that you had traveled to Alaska several years to go to a race. Is that correct?
Yep.
So when you did that, was that a one-off time, or was that part of the plan, or were you just kind of dabbling in snow racing at that point?
Well, we did one snow race here in Australia with Malamutes when we just had a 2-dog team back in, I think it was about 97, I think it was, 98 maybe. Not too sure, it was a while ago.
Okay.
And then it was just all dry land basically from then on because I didn't really enjoy the snow that we had up here. And then I seen we brought Greg Salenton out as our race marshal for Wild Dog for one race. And then I seen he advertised on Facebook that he wanted a handler for a month or so to help him out because his wife was going back to New York to see her family. So I was like, yeah, all right. I answered, I said, yeah, I'll come over. And he goes, are you serious? I said, yeah, why not? I'll come and see what life's about over there and, check it all out. And he goes, all right, no worries. Come on over. So I paid for the flight and he sort of said, right, don't worry about accommodation because he just stay with me. And I just helped him train dogs then. And then I was like, oh my God, this is amazing over here. And then I think that's when they sort of were talking about having the World Championships up in North Pole in Alaska. I think it was about 1 or 2 years later. And then we were like, we're going. We got back home and I said to Mandy, so we're going to that. We've got to check that out. So I managed to get a team from Greg and get not sponsorship, but approval from the Australian Federation to go race over there as Australia and race at the World Championships in the North Pole, I think in 4-dog class. And then that was the year I did the limited North American. And then I think I raced once more in Canada a few years later, but that was a dryland race.
Interesting. If I could expound on that just a little bit more, Clint, when you had mentioned that most of your events are dryland compared to those races that you did on the snow. For our folks that may not know the big differences between the two sports, what are some of the big takeaways that you took away from racing up here in Alaska at the Open American and that sort of thing? What did you take back to enhance your career that you still use today?
Well, I think there's a lot of the sort of small little things you sort of pick up away people for training and stuff like that. A lot of it, I guess, we can't put in place here because of the temperature difference and the feeding and all that sort of. I wanted to try and change our feeding sort of method here, but it's not as crucial to have so much water like over there in Alaska. There's so much water, because the dogs don't drink, but here they've always got the water, so it wasn't really anything I could sort of put in place. It was mainly just like the dogs that I was sort of wanted to sort of experience different sort of type of dogs and how they're different, if you know roughly what I mean, to ours here, and look at what direction we really wanted to sort of go more towards. North America had a lot more Alaskan-y sort of looking dogs, and the ones we were looking at were more European sort of sleeker looking dogs, I guess. They're not so, I don't know, might offend a few North American people or whatever, but the type of dogs were a little bit different, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Sprint sort of side.
Yep, and you've ended up. We've talked about that at the beginning of the show. You ended up with that exactly what you wanted with the importing of the semen and all of that. You took that from what you saw to what you have now. Is that right?
Yeah. A lot of it was. I went to one of the World Championships up in Saguenay up in Canada. It was the first time I went overseas, and we were both going to go over for that to check it out and just to see, all the sort of, because so many Europeans were going, and it was a good point to sort of see everybody there because it was a World Championship. So there would have been a lot of North American people and Europeans sort of come over for that. And both Mandy and myself were going to go over for that. But one of our older Malamutes said, I think he had cancer, leg taken off around that time, and it was sort of too hard for both of us to go and to leave him. So I just sort of went to sort of make contacts, I guess, and see definitely which direction we wanted to go towards in the dogs. And I went over for that and took them by surprise. I just turned up on the, at the race sort of site and said, yeah, I'm here for the race. And this woman sort of jumped up from behind the counter and she goes, you messaged her, like, sent us an email about this, didn't you? I said, yeah. She goes, oh, we didn't think you were serious. I'm like, yeah, I'm serious. I'm here. Like, they couldn't believe it. They just came all the way over from Australia just to come and watch a race.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. And before I turn it over to KP, you had mentioned just coming over for a race. That's a really interesting perspective because you're coming over for literally 4 hours of competition. If you're doing a 2-day race of a couple of hours on the trail, that's a heck of a lot of travel just for 4 hours on the trail, isn't it?
Yeah, that's sort of what they said as well. They couldn't believe it. Flew all the way over there for that, and then I drove up from Montreal, got a car from there, and drove up. And I didn't know where I was going. I just knew the race site, and I just turned up and got accommodation. They ended up sort of getting half the accommodation sort of sorted for me, and said, yeah, no worries, you can be our trial help, and asking me all these questions and all that sort of stuff. And I thought, well, I came to learn off you guys, so I didn't think you'd been learning much off of me. But they were sort of asking about the trial. Oh, should we put it this way, or is this sort of good sort of start? And I mean, it wasn't too many questions, but just sort of a little bit of ideas and stuff. And I thought, holy hell, yeah. I'm here watching you guys. I want to see what's going on here.
Right. Very cool. KP, anything else for Clint in closing?
Clint, thank you so much. He's a super cool guy to listen to. Always, makes jokes and great, ambassador of our sport in Australia. Helps a lot of people out there. And looking forward to see you and Mandy back in Alaska. Hopefully we can, have quarantines going away and have you come over and race again with us.
Yeah, it'd be good to come over. Thanks for having me. And wish I did a lot earlier, like when you guys asked first time, but, life gets in the way, I guess.
Hey, no problems. I look forward to meeting you one day, Clint. Take care, okay?
Yeah, it would be good.
Very good.
We'll have a couple of beers together.
Very good. You're welcome. On behalf of our guest today, Clint Graham, this is Robert and KP for the Dog Driver Show. Be sure to check us out on our website at dogworksradio.com. We'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.
From First Paw Media, this is the Dog Driver Show. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we invite you to subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll find a link on the episode notes. You can tap or swipe on the episode cover art, and you can see some offers from our sponsors. You can support our show by supporting them. If you like what you have heard, we would love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe too. Your hosts are Robert Forto and Kurosh Parto. Our producer is Robert Forto and created for First Paw Media.